All right. We want to thank all you guys for joining. We're gonna get started here in about 5 minutes. Thank you guys for supporting Jonathan McMillan. My name is Albus Brooks, and we're just gonna let folks file in here. This is 2020. It's been a crazy year, but it's been exciting to see the transformation in people's lives, and you're gonna hear some great stories and testimonials today about what has happened in the past 20 years in Jonathan McMillan's life. And so come on, get excited. We got about 17 folks on right now, which is exciting. Thank you for being here, giving up your Sunday evening. I know my family's upstairs eating right now, but this is so important to talk about transformation in our lives, and one man's life in particular, and how we can do that throughout a city. So we'll be following on. 3 more minutes and we'll get going. Come on in. We should have some music in the background here. I feel like some jazz, some John Coltrane, some Miles Davis. That's what I really enjoy when I'm reflecting on what has happened in my life and things like that. I like to hear a little bit of somebody said you can sing something, but I can't sing. See, that's the thing. I can't really sing, but there's something about jazz. Jazz is about improvisation, right? It's about that improv. It's about everyone in the band playing their part, that they have something to offer. And that's why I love jazz. It's not just the music that we listen to. It's an invitation to be a part of the greater movement. And so I'm excited about that. Folks is laughing. Y'all crack me up. Okay. So again, it's 2020. We are celebrating Jonathan McMillan's life transformation, from prison unto a leader here today. We got about a couple more minutes. I'm going to let folks file on right now. So about 1:30, we'll get started, and I'll do a quick introduction, and Jonathan will come on out. Thank you guys for being here and giving up your Sunday evening on a holiday season. Really appreciate you. All right, we got about 30 folks on. So I'm going to get started. Once again, my name is Albus Brooks. I am the former president of Denver City Council, current vice president of Millender White, which is a development construction company, and also I'm the president of the Perry Brooks Senior Foundation, which is a foundation focused on raising up and investing in young boys of color in Colorado and Southern California. And I'm a personal friend of Jonathan, and I'm here today because I've seen the transformation in his life, and I'm so excited about it. So I'm gonna read a little bit about Jonathan and his biography, and then I'm gonna share, kind of just set up this evening on what's going on and why it's so critically important, and why we appreciate you all being on here. So Jonathan obviously is a native of Denver. He is the founder and chief success strategist for Be Better Than Average, a company that provides success, skills, and personal development training through mentoring and life coaching services. He has authored 2 books. The most recent titled I Am Better Than Average, 100 and 101 affirmations to help you build a life better than average. He has also served in the city and county of Denver as the community liaison office for city council, which was in my office in District 9, which he did an incredible job. He was an outreach worker for Denver's Department of Public Safety, in the Gang Reduction in Denver program initiative. He's had several roles. A role he worked as current and former gang members, where he is mentoring to support successful and live this positive life. You know, I've seen him many times working with these young folks from all over Denver, and I've seen the transformation in their lives. It's incredible. He also assists with the Faith Council, which he oversees, the Safe Haven Project, which provides immediate community support in the aftermath of the gang related violence. Jonathan is very involved with My Brother's Keepers program here in Denver. Obviously, that was initiated by President Obama. Powerful program, and Jonathan and I have traveled across America speaking to different cities about the power and that investment in our boys of color. He is also an active participant in facilitating ongoing roundtables and forums called Kids and Cops, Bridging the Gap in design that was designed by the city of Denver, the Office of the Independent Monitor, and intended improving relationships in our communities with young people of color. In 2018, he was elected as the chairman of the Denver African American Commission, where he works to be an authentic advocate for those who are disenfranchised as citizens by crafting programs and recommending legislation for the mayor to go back on and work and make sure that it's crafted from the community up. Additionally, Jonathan, who sits on the advisory board with the Park Hill Strong, a youth violence prevention project in near Northeast Denver that really focuses on trauma-informed practices. And so he has also been honored by the Denver Spectrum magazine 2016 as African Americans who make a difference. He's won My Brother's Keeper initiative for the city of Denver top 25 contributors, and was a recent recipient of the Wellington and Wilma Webb Legacy Leadership Award from the Urban Leadership Foundation. And it's incredible to see all of these issues and see Jonathan engage in life. Because I'm gonna tell you something, the thing that inspires me about Jonathan, and it should inspire all of us, is Jonathan told me a story one time about him in a jail cell 20 years ago, looking out. He had a little window and he looked out and he began to visualize himself today. He could see past the issues, past what he was going through, past his mistakes, past the system that is just trying to crush young brothers every day. He could see past all that into being the solution to into being the antidote to all of this issues that we're facing today. And, you know, it reminds me, I used to have a coach that said, if you can't visualize it, you won't realize it. And so we need to build that capacity to visualize the men and the women we want to be, despite the barriers and the issues and all that. The power is in visualizing it and claiming it. And now he has manifested that in his life. And so I'm so proud to introduce Jonathan. I've worked with him professionally. He's a good friend. We've spoke together in conferences and in front of hundreds of people all over this country, protecting and fighting for young Black lives and young brothers all over this country. And I can tell you, this is a man who has transformed his life in the last 20 years, and we are lucky to have him in the city of Denver, and I'm honored to introduce him. So without further ado, y'all, thank you for being here. Please give it up for my man, Jonathan McMillan.
Thank you, AB. Thank you, Albus, man. Oh, boy, I got chills listening to the introduction because, as you mentioned, man, it's been a great relationship between us, and You've been very supportive, and I'm extremely grateful. And I'm so grateful to everybody who's tuned in tonight. I'm going to be, honestly, I had a script all, and I might jump back to it, but I'm speaking from the heart right now. When I came up with the idea to do this event tonight, I really had no idea exactly what it was. I knew that it had to be two things. Number one is celebrating the last 20 years. Because, in my head 20 years ago, I knew my life was going to be different, but I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. And the fact that I'm here now, able to talk to an audience, I'm super, 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 super grateful and excited. The other thing is, this needs to be a conversation with me and some of my friends who I've invited tonight to join us to talk about how do we scale, amplify, recreate, replicate the success stories. How do we reduce the recidivism? How do we reimagine what reentry looks like? So the fact that you all joined me tonight to have this really important conversation, I'm beyond grateful. This is what I'm calling 20 years to life, from inmate to entrepreneur. And like I said, I'm really glad that you joined me. Because again, 20 years ago on this date, December 20th, 2000, I was released from the Colorado Department of Corrections and began my journey of becoming the man, the father, the husband, the mentor, the author, the speaker, and the activist that so many of you have come to know. There are so many people who have played a part in what my life has become. And I want to just take a few moments, if you'll bear with me, I want to take a few moments to thank them now. First and foremost, I need to thank my parents, Charles McMillan and Judith and James Simons, who have continually loved me and supported me. I was not always an easy child, and I'm probably still not an easy adult child. So I appreciate them always bearing with me. Next, I have to thank my children, Asia, Jahai, Julian, who probably have been my best contribution to the world because they're such sweet, incredible people. Now, next, I need to give super duper extra thanks to my wife, Tamika, who has loved, supported, and tolerated me and continually pushed me to be better over the last 10 years. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary earlier this year. And then to those who I can call my friends, whether lifelong or those who have come into my life in more recent years, I thank you all. I love you. I'm grateful for you all. You all inspire me. You encourage me, advise, assist, and hold me accountable to being the person who you see before you today. Next, I want to
Jonathan, you muted yourself.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Knew there's going to be some technical issues tonight. Like I said, I was just shouting out our sponsors here: Albus Brooks, Jim Peros, Debbie Hunter Holden, Titus Holloway, and then Chris Cleveland from the Alpha Events Group, all who have joined in to support tonight, support this event. Of course, be better than average. The Black Business Initiative, I got my girl Joyce Johnson, behind the scenes helping me out. I don't know what I would have done without you. The Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition, Cross Purpose, Justice Reskill, Remerge, Second Chance Center, and the Other Side Academy. These are all organizations who are not only supporting me tonight, but they are the ones who are they're the change makers, they're the advocates, they're the allies, and they're the friends and family of the formerly incarcerated. So I want to thank you very much. Before we get really into it, I need to take a couple of moments to dedicate tonight's event to my people who are really important to me. And this evening is dedicated to my grandparents, Omel McMillan and Chester Garland. And they were two people who never let me think I was forgotten while I was incarcerated. My grandmother would write for me every month, and I'm sure she prayed for me every day. And my grandfather would make a 3-hour drive just one way. So a total of a 6-hour drive once a month to come visit me, and sometimes bringing my young daughter with him so she would know and remember her daddy. Now, he made this trip consistently until his health started to fail him. And as a matter of fact, the day that I found out that I was going to be paroled, I was so excited, and I got the news, and I ran back to my housing unit and got to the phone and picked up the phone and called the house to share my news. And sadly, I had found out that I was told that he had passed away earlier that morning. And well, that was obviously just devastating. But I have come to think of that moment as him holding on long enough to know that his baby boy was going to be okay. And here we are 20 years later, and I think I'm okay. What do y'all think? Life is pretty good. I've come a long way in the last 20 years, and I've spent the last 20 years reinventing myself. I've become a recognized and respected community leader, helping young people who are on the same path which led me to prison, helping them change their lives and make better decisions. I've become an advocate for the criminal justice and juvenile justice reform, successfully testifying on behalf of laws to reduce the collateral consequences of felony conviction and incarceration. And one of my proudest moments is I testified on behalf of the elimination of the death penalty in Colorado. I've become a businessman and an author who empowers people to dream big and create plans to be successful. And I've sat at tables with leaders from all across the country to strategize how to dismantle the racist systems that disenfranchise our young boys and our young men of color and their families and their communities. I've been the first person with a felony conviction to work for the Denver's Department of Safety. I've become a leader in the community of youth initiatives to reduce youth violence by attacking the root causes of that violence. And, as I think back on December 20th, 2000, that was just the beginning of this incredible journey of what I call redemption and reinvention. And I celebrate that today because before I walked out of that facility, some of the staff would say to me, "We'll keep a bed open for you," or "We'll see you soon." And the statistics said they were probably right. When I was released from prison in 2000, at the best end of things, 50% of people who left prison were back within 3 years. Up to 64% were coming back within 3 years. And then my personal track record also said that they were probably right. Up to that point, I hadn't been successful at much in life except for getting locked up. But when they told me we'll see you again, or we'll save a bed for you, I'm thinking to myself, no, the hell you won't. Right? I didn't say it out loud. I just thought it. Because I knew that the man who was leaving that prison was much different than the boy who walked in. And like I've said before, this journey has been incredible in so many ways, but it's also been extremely difficult and challenging at times. It's also been extremely fulfilling and rewarding. And I mean that sincerely. And while I'm still not where I would like to be in many areas of my life, I have very few regrets. Even going to prison. Yes, you heard that right. Even going to prison. See, I've come to understand the fact that had I not gone to prison, I would never have become the person who I am now. And like the saying goes, hindsight is 2020 in a good way. I mean, not in the pandemic, economic crash, anxiety attack inducing, apocalyptic way that most of us think of 2020. I'm saying I now have a clear vision when I look back at my life and the fact that I went to prison. I could see that in some ways it was a good thing. But honestly, back in 1998, it's safe to say I wasn't really that excited to be locked up. I had no idea that then my life would be what it turned out to be. See, going to prison was the saddest, scariest point of my life. As a matter of fact, I want to share a story with you about the first day in prison. So I get off the bus, right? And I have my few belongings, and I get processed, and I get sent to my pod, and uh, find my cell, and I open the door to my cell and set my stuff in my bunk, and I notice that my cellmate has a TV, and the TV has cable, right? So I'm like, okay, did not expect that. And the TV has the BET network on it, and like a moment, like a soundtrack of a movie. As I'm unpacking my stuff, the song comes on the TV, and it's a new song by the R&B group Casey and JoJo from the soundtrack of the new Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence movie of the songs called Life. Both the song and the movie are called Life. And I hear her playing Life, Life. I can't sing Life, Life. And it's like, I knew in that moment that I have really, really messed my life up. And I felt bad for myself. I felt lost. I felt out of place. And then things got worse, much worse. About 2 months after I got locked up, I got really, really sick. I mean, so sick that I was actually rushed out of the prison in the back of an ambulance to the Colorado State Hospital in Pueblo, Colorado. And I was diagnosed with pneumonia. And I was there in the hospital for about a week. And I healed, but I mean, I'm telling you, I was scared and lonely, and it was a horrible, horrible experience, which then got even worse because after I healed enough to be released from the hospital and sent back to prison, I had to make essentially a layover in the prison's infirmary. And for those who don't know, the prison infirmary is a lot like a hospice. It's a place where old or critically injured prisoners go to die. And here I am, a relatively healthy 25-year-old, shackled to a bed in a small medical ward with people dying all around me. And they're dying without any friends or family, just prison guards, many of whom couldn't care less. It was sad. And the experience was like the movie A Christmas Carol, where the ghost of the Christmas future comes and shows Ebenezer Scrooge that eventually he dies alone and forgotten. And in those moments, everything became very, very clear to me. I saw exactly how my life was going to end if I didn't make some changes immediately. It was then and there that I knew that rock bottom, like the old Bugs Bunny cartoon used to say, was a great place to visit, but I didn't want to live there. And that's when I came up with the motto and mindset which I've come to live by. So what? Now what? And I meant that, and I still mean that literally. Now what? I had to figure out what I was going to do and who I was going to be. And I came to the realization that the way that I thought about myself and the way that I thought about the world up to that point, up to the point that I went to prison, is exactly how I got there. And I realized that if I wanted to live a different life, I was going to have to start to think differently. But of course, you only know what you know. So I went to the prison library and I picked up a book called Think and Grow Rich. And if you're not familiar with the book, it was published in 1937 by a man named Napoleon Hill, who studied some of the most successful people of the time and reported what the common characteristics and common traits that they had that made them so successful. And what he discovered and reported out was that the most important trait they possessed was what they call a definiteness of purpose. Purpose. Something that I completely lacked in my life. I hadn't done much of anything on or with purpose. I pretty much unintentionally ended up in prison because I lacked purpose in my life. For so long, I just went with the flow. And going with the flow is like the Colorado River. You just flow with it until one day you end up with a Grand Canyon. Going with the flow created one of the seventh wonders of the world. And I knew right then that I needed to create and begin to define my purpose. Now, I won't pretend like it was easy, but it wasn't as hard as you would imagine either. I wasn't exactly sure what my purpose was, and I had to do a lot of soul searching before I was able to have that definiteness that Napoleon Hill described in his book. But the one thing with absolute certainty that I knew about my purpose was that it was not in that prison or any other. Now, I'm going to pause for just a second as I iron out some of the technical issues. Looks like we're having some audio issues. Can you all hear me? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to pause for just a second here. I need to, it happens. So bear with me for just a second, y'all. Okay, we're good. You're my back. Can you hear me? All right. I don't know what happened there, but we're good. So, like I said, I knew that my purpose was not in that or any other prison. And you'll laugh. I thought that my purpose was to be a hip hop artist. So, y'all see this picture here. This was from, I think, 1992 or 93. I thought I was going to be Best thing since Master P, Snoop Dogg. And I pictured myself, literally, I would lay in bed at night and picture myself in the front row of some music award show, hearing my name called and walking up on that stage. But as I learned more about what true success was, what it means, what it looks like, I knew that my purpose wasn't being an entertainer, but rather an educator. And as I learned more about the importance of setting goals and building an empowered self-identity and critical thinking, I realized that if I hadn't learned those things, then neither had most of the people in prison like me, especially those who looked like me and grew up in the same neighborhoods as me. And one day, as I was sitting in the prison day room, I had the epiphany that the disproportionate number of young Black men inside prison was not by accident. It was purposeful. It was intentional. And I remember reading a quote that said, if you can make a man feel he is inferior, you will not have to compel him to accept an inferior status, for he will seek it himself. And when I first heard those words back in high school, I just thought it was like some cool gangster boss stuff, right? Like some kind of Jedi mind trick. But when I came across the quote again years later, while in prison, in the context of the book from which it came, The Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, I began to understand so many things about how I and so many others like me ended up in prison. So many of us, like young Black men, like Dr. Woodson wrote, were convinced that we were inferior. So for much of my adolescence, I was told repeatedly by the media, by the community, by faith leaders, and many others who were respected and trusted sources that simply because I was young Black male, I was a part of an endangered species. And that designation had very clear expectations and descriptions. We were more likely to drop out of high school. We were more likely to go to prison and college. We were more likely to die before the age of 25 than any other demographic in the world. And we were more likely to be absent fathers because either death or incarceration. And there I was sitting in prison checking 3 out of the 4 boxes. A high school dropout, father of a young child, headed to prison at 24 years old. And sitting in that day room looking at so many others just like me, it became clear that the fact that America leads the world in locking up their own citizens, and the fact that Black people make up a disproportionate 38% of those people in prison, and the fact that the rate of American citizens going to prison dramatically increased by over 100% within 10 years of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and over 300% within 30 years of that law being passed, that this was very intentional. As time passed and prison became more and more normalized and frankly institutionalized and industrialized in American society, especially for young Black men, it became clear that so many of us were brainwashed into believing that we really were an endangered species, and that our destinies were that of only prison and death. But years later, as I began to define my purpose, I also rewrote my belief about what destiny was. I redefined my destiny by possessing a desire to disrupt the system, a belief that it was possible and that I was able and worthy of making that change. And then I built the will and determination to make it happen. I was ready to shift the paradigm and change the narrative. But in order to do that, I was going to have to be just as purposeful as the prison industry is about keeping Black men incarcerated. The more I learned about myself and the system which created my circumstances, the more my purpose was becoming clear and focused. I worked on my parole plan, which included moving to Houston and being with my daughter and my mom. I planned on going to college. I planned on writing a book and starting a business. I had all these great plans, and then something crazy happened. Life. Almost immediately, I was faced with challenges which I was kind of unprepared to overcome. See, my parole officer was completely unhelpful. In fact, he was forbidding me from associating with the people who were willing to support me simply because he thought their car was the wrong color. The Department of Corrections delayed me going to Houston to be with my support system, which left me stuck here in Denver in an unhealthy environment, which was lacking in resources. And then when I got to Houston, my parole officer there kept threatening to send me back to Denver simply because he could. It got to the point where it almost appeared like it was going to be easier to just go back to prison. But then I remembered that wasn't part of my purpose. And every one of the challenges I faced from the people inside the correction system helped me become more definite about what my purpose was. I wanted to, and still do, want to change the system. I wanted to disrupt and dismantle that system. But in order to do that, I had to become the person who was capable of achieving that goal. In order to become that person, I had to do the things that that type of person does. And those things are rising up to the challenges that they face. The type of people who do what I wanted to do are the type of people who are willing to fail. They're the type of people who are willing to move out of their comfort zones and try things that they aren't completely sure of, like a live stream broadcast with no technical experience on a Sunday night. They don't take things personally. They know that there are people who don't care if they win or lose. And they even know there are people out there who want them to fail. But they don't let those people distract or discourage them. They accept and get comfortable with the fact that no matter what, life is hard. So they choose their hard. Jumping through hoops and tolerating disrespect and pettiness and the judgment of the criminal justice system and society in general, just because you want to stay out of prison, is hard. But so is being in prison. Choose your hard. Being employed or underemployed is hard. Building a rewarding, enriching career is hard. Choose your hard. Being in debt, having bad credit, living from check to check is hard. Saving money, building good credit, and being financially disciplined is hard. Choose your hard. Being one of the only people in the room and at meetings fighting for equity and opportunity is hard, but so is being excluded and suffering the consequences of policies which disenfranchise entire races of people is also hard. Choose your hard. Now, even after being released from prison, it took me a while to understand that true freedom is choices and being able to choose your hard. Now, that being said, succeeding as a formerly incarcerated person doesn't have to be as hard as it is. It shouldn't be as hard as it is. And as I mentioned earlier, the year I left prison, the odds of me returning within 3 years were over 50%. And many of the challenges which I faced were a direct result of some of the people working in the system. Some of the people who I encountered out at my involvement in the legal system were downright cruel. From the probation officer who used to tell me that they couldn't wait to revoke my probation, or to the one that lied to me and on me in court, or to the community corrections manager who continually tried to sabotage me by calling my job in attempts to get them to fire me, or the prison staff who discouraged inmate success by saying, "See you when you get back," or "We'll save a bed for you," or the parole officers who acted like their primary jobs were making my life miserable and complicated, actively working against my and other clients' success. Honestly, it wasn't until my final year of parole that I eventually encountered someone who actively encouraged and supported and assisted me in completing my parole requirements. She was a kind, understanding professional who got to know me and helped me successfully navigate and exit the justice system. And I need you to understand the significance of the fact that a teenager who made one mistake, a nonviolent mistake one night, spiraled deeper and deeper into the criminal justice system for 10 years until one person finally decided to help me by simply being kind and respecting me as a person. 10 years for a nonviolent crime. Ended up going to probation, to community corrections, to prison, to parole. And it just took one person to help me be successful. And that's the lesson I want for us all to take away from this. What are the actionable steps that we could all help those who are returning back to us? Not society, but back to us. How do we help others become whole, healthy, healed, and the best versions of themselves? How do we build a stronger community by building stronger people who will be a part of that community? How do we reimagine reentry, reduce recidivism, and replicate my results? Now, I would love to see your ideas in the chat. I'm sorry, I haven't been able to monitor the chat so far, but I want to ask that direct question. How do we help those returning back to us? What do we do? As if I don't care if you're a community member, a corrections officer, a legislator, a prison warden, what role do you have in replicating my success? Now, I want you to put those in the comments. Put your ideas in the comments, and we're going to use the hashtag tonight, reimagine reentry, and reduce recidivism. Hopefully on all social media platforms so that we can get it trained and to raise some awareness and get people talking and aware of the issue. I'm going to pause for just a moment here and maybe look at some of the comments. Harvey, I love that our setbacks will set us up for a professional, purposeful work. I appreciate everyone who's come out. Now, I want to take a quick break just so I can drink some water. I'm absolutely parched. Looks like we were having some issues with the volume. I hope that the volume is back working on YouTube. Anybody watching on YouTube, let me know. I see it's still live there. So this is, I'll tell you, trying this whole live stream thing is extremely uncomfortable to me, but it's something that I feel like I needed to do in order to move to the next level for myself and help others. So see a comment here, meeting people where they are. Some people's bottom is deeper than others. Absolutely. That's gospel right there, Terry. I'm expecting a guest to come in and join us in just in just a couple of minutes here. Sorry, I'm laughing though. Senator Coleman is dating me, aging me here, talking about he was 6 in 1993. Brother, my felony was I got tattoos and felonies older than you, Coleman. I'm expecting a guest to join us here in a few minutes, and after a guest jumps in, I'm going to we're going to go ahead and kick it over to our roundtable. I have some really, really, really dear friends who are joining me on the panel. These are the experts. These are the advocates. These are the ones who are the change makers who are making it happen for us. And when I say us, I'm being very intentional with using the pronoun us because, you know, the way that America incarcerates their citizens, I think I did the math a few years ago, probably about 1 in 4 people, or maybe a little bit higher, like one out of 4 or 1 out of 6, are involved in the criminal justice system in one way or another. So that means, like, you walk into a grocery store, there's a chance that you are going to be interacting with somebody who is really struggling to get back on their feet, whether they're looking for groceries and trying to figure out how to feed their family, or if they're working there at the store as an essential worker, putting their lives on the line because they can't find any other type of employment because of the barriers that exist for people with criminal convictions. Maurice asks, you were explaining you were on a destructive path. How did you get there? And once released, how were you received? That's a great question, Mo. So, how did I get there? There was no straight path to getting there, except for me thinking that the path I was on was normal. And what I mean by that, we're relatively the same age. I think we're probably within a year of each other. Growing up in the late '80s, early '90s, and I own this. I'm not discounting anyone who was able to make it out of or off that path or out of the environment that existed. But for so many of us, we succumb to the culture idea of to be a young black man meant to be involved in gangs and be involved in reckless behavior, because so many of the narrative that was pushed to us was that you're going to die anyway. You're probably going to end up in prison anyway, and it created what I call a paradigm of hopelessness. And that's one of the reasons that when I work with young people nowadays, I'm very intentional about highlighting the assets that they have, right? Looking at the things that they do very well, the skills that may be raw and unrefined, and helping them find pathways to really work towards expanding those and building on those and connecting them with people, with a network of people who are willing and able to support those young people. As Albus mentioned earlier, when I was working for him, we had some interns in our office who I was very intentional about bringing them down to the city and county building and meeting people in positions of leadership who looked like them. And not only just meeting with them, but sitting down. Actually, Rep Coleman was one of those people. We met at Coffee at the Point, and he sat down and gave these three young men just the real talk about like how challenging life is, but also like looking in at the assets that they had and saying, I recognize this in you, and how can I help support you? All right. I hope they answer your question, Mo. I know that many prisoners have mental health issues. Yet few mental health professionals have training with this population. How do we best provide the training they need in order to effectively help this population? Roger, that's a spot on question and assessment. So many people, whether they are incarcerated or not incarcerated, are dealing with undiagnosed mental health issues, and traumatic issues. And unfortunately, criminal behavior, and I hate to label it that way, but that's the best way to frame it, is oftentimes, especially when we're working with young people who are involved in violence, we have seen, and studies have shown empirical evidence that shows that some of the behaviors that will get a person criminalized, I'll put it that way, and involved in the criminal justice system are perfectly normal coping mechanisms. When you see somebody being aggressive, or see somebody being withdrawn, or somebody is there's a lot of different things, and I'll frame this with saying I'm not a mental health therapist or professional in any shape, form, or fashion. I am just a person with a lot of lived experience working with a lot of people who have these issues. I think I may ask Leo to speak on this a little bit more when we bring him on in just a couple of minutes. But yes, ultimately there's so much unaddressed mental health needs that get people incarcerated and keep them incarcerated. And we as a society need to be much more intentional about how we address those in most in need. I will give a round of applause and congratulations to organizations like Lifeline and others, the Center for African American Health, who put together some proposals through the Caring for Denver Act to really support the reentry population and some of the populations in the Denver metro area who are really struggling and not able to find the resources they need for adequate, not just adequate mental health care, but other needs as well. So, so many of the agencies and people I work with address things from a public health approach and looking at the risk factors and the root causes of what causes of why a person goes into the criminal justice system. So, Roger, I'll look forward to talking with you. I think we actually have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. So let's make that happen. Looks like our other guest may not have joined us. I can't see. Oh, there he is. There he is. Let's bring on Mr. Weiser, Attorney General Weiser, who I have gotten the pleasure to talk to a couple times over the last couple of months, talking about being very intentional about creating some pathways for employment for this population. So, my apologies. You've been sitting there for a while.
It's all good. I'm learning. I'm taking it in. You're an inspiration, Jonathan. This is a big deal. It's an important celebration. I want to start with a point. It comes from the answer you had both to Maurice and Roger's question, which is, let's make 2021 the year of empathy. Let's make it the year of de-stigmatization. That's a big word. But part of what is blocking empathy is stigma. Part of what blocks people's own empathy for themselves is shame. We need people to be there for one another. And the mental health issues that we face in a society are profound. The issues about judging other people are blocking relationships. Just because somebody's homeless, just because someone's transgender, just because someone has a criminal record, that doesn't dehumanize them. And too often, people are willing to view someone as the other. That blockage prevents empathy. By seeing everybody, and if you come to it from a religious standpoint, you would say as a child of God, but whatever you see humanity in other people, you can see everyone as deserving opportunity. And that should come from the sense that we're in this together. The idea of a society is a collective. We have collective responsibility for one another. And you talked about growing up in an environment where criminal activity was normalized and where you were drawn into it and you found your way out of it. That is a remarkable accomplishment. What people who lack empathy might not see is that's a lot easier to happen than some who lead with judgment might believe. For people who don't recognize that homeless individuals are human beings, they might assume that if you're homeless, you must have done something wrong. Those judgments get in the way of empathy. And so my wish for 2021 and for Colorado, and Jonathan, what's so powerful about your journey is it's a call to empathy. It's a call to working together. And when we've talked together about the issues around the school to prison pipeline, we're talking about not being quick to judge people, often with race being one of the drivers behind those judgments. We've also talked about the need to reimagine reentry. And for me, that's another critical 2021 goal for me. We in Colorado can reimagine reentry, which is such a powerful opportunity on a human level, on a public safety level. And of course, economically, we shouldn't be spending so much money to keep people incarcerated if we can find other ways to help people live productive lives. And you are preaching that gospel. You are walking that walk. You are collaborating that effort. And we're blessed to have you here in Colorado. So, Jonathan, thank you for all of your advocacy. Thank you for all of your hard work. And we in Colorado, I know we've got soon to be Senator James Coleman with us here. James and I are with you in that work. And I know that we all have work to do. Thank you for helping us do it, guiding us, and being an incredibly important leader in our community.
Thank you, A.G. Weiser. I appreciate you taking time to join the conversation with us. As Albus has let me know, Sunday evenings are typically family time for so many people, and I appreciate you taking time to sharing. Actually, let me say, I appreciate your family for sharing you with us. So,
well, we're all family here in Colorado. Is Albus's family? Is he on too right now? Is Albus with us?
I think he may have jumped off to take care of the kids.
All right, I got to jump off to do the same, but we're all in this together. Thank you, John.
I appreciate it. I'll talk with you soon. Thank you for
all right,
joining.
Look forward to it now. Congratulations.
Well, you heard it there. I'm grateful that Attorney Weiser understands how important empathy is in order for us to even begin to have any kind of substantial or meaningful conversations. When we talk about reimagining reentry, I appreciate his words, and I think that most of you who know me know that I am going to hold him to that. Empathy begins in the way that you act, not with what you say. And I'm going to give the man the benefit of the doubt because, again, he was kind enough to show up today, and I truly do appreciate that. Before we jump into the panel, I just want to raise notice to, as I think about 20 years ago, actually 21 years ago, as Y2K was approaching, and I was an inmate still, I was really scared because we had no idea at the time what was going to happen to us. The rumors were, if the computer shut down, the world starts coming to an end at midnight, New Year's Eve, that the prisoners were going to be executed, right? I bring that up because I have to raise the awareness that there are prisoners right now who are going through similar anxiety as when it comes to COVID. Our state has not, in my opinion, not done right by what the science says, and prioritizing people who are in cohabitation facilities and making sure that they are vaccinated because they're a vulnerable population and they're going to be coming back out into society. And if they are not vaccinated, they're more likely to be susceptible to either being infected or passing on the infection. So I ask you all to make sure that we be empathetic about what our incarcerated population is going through. Those are our brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, nieces, sisters, brothers, all of those. Those are people, they're not just locked up inmates. So that's my soapbox. I'm going to now bring in an incredible panel. I'm going to bring them in one by one. And I'm going to start with Terry House Wash. My big sister from another mister. We have been doing this work together for over 10 years. She's an incredible person with an incredible story. I chose you intentionally to bring you on first, Terry, because you have the ability to really demonstrate what it looks like to move past the story. And then not only do you move past the story of, formerly incarcerated and all that, but you make sure that you remind people what it's like to be empathetic. And I so much appreciate, and I've learned so much about you and all of that. So, Terry, welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Jonathan. I so appreciate you having me here, and I want to first and foremost congratulate you on your success and on your path. We met when you were halfway through this journey and still, struggling and trying to figure out where you are. And I am so happy for and proud of you, as I hope you are of yourself. And so I'll pat you on your back, but I need to see you pat yourself on the back as well. Good job.
I did that because Terry Means thing is very literally. You'll find that out. Next up, I want to bring in my newish friend. We've known each other for a few years. We've had the pleasure of sitting together in the Capitol, waiting to testify on behalf of some bills and in support of our incarcerated population and those who are disenfranchised by the criminal justice system. Tammy, thank you so much. I'm bringing you in, and before I say anything else about you, I just have to thank you so much for the work that you're doing over at Bayard Enterprises and bringing me on board to support that work as now part of the board of directors. I appreciate you so much. You helped expand my network, and I'm at a loss for words. I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure bringing you on board to our board, our newest board member of our board of directors. That is just amazing that you accepted. And I'm really glad to be here. And your journey is commendable. You've done such an amazing job. And I have similar experiences as you. I never made it to prison, but I made it to the community corrections and did all of that. And actually, just a few days ago, it was 2 years that the governor pardoned me for my crimes. So that was exciting that it came up in my Facebook feed. So I'm really excited to be here, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you so much. That's my next move, is working on a pardon. So thank you.
I'll help you. Just let me know what you need, and I'll be happy to walk you through the steps.
Thank you so much. So next, I literally have to flip a coin about which brother I'm going to bring on next. And it's going to land on LL Cool J, Leo Reyes, my guy, my brother in this space. Leo, you are the definition of community advocate. I make it no secret that I model everything that I do off of what I learned from you. I've watched you over the last several years in the way that you are able to bring the lived experience piece of it, the community piece to it, and add the academic pieces to it, and make it real for everybody at the table, whether it's the systems people or it's the homeboys in the hood. Like you are that guy, and anytime I call you, you answer, you text back, and I attempt to always be that for you, man. I love you. Thank you for showing up today. Right on, Leo.
Jonathan, man, I appreciate it. I just want to start off by saying congratulations, bro. Congratulations, honestly, because what you talked about, unless if you know, you don't know, right? And getting on after getting out, which is a phrase that good friends of mine use from CCJRC on their Go Guide book. Getting on after getting out is not that easy, you know. And describing what you did, I honor you, man, and it's been an honor serving with you, and it's an honor to be here with you and celebratory of who you are and what message you're getting across, man. So thank you very much.
Thanks, brother. All right, last but definitely not least, man, this dude is a powerhouse. I like to call him Big Brother just because he's like he little physically like the big brother, but he reminds me that I'm the old guy on the block. My guy James, man. This is a person who I have gotten the pleasure to know over the last 4 or 5 years, and he's your atypical politician. Like, this is the guy who's going to talk to you as though politics is his job, and it doesn't define him. He is not the person who's going to tell you what you want to hear simply because he thinks that it's going to get him more votes. He is in the position in order to hold space and make space for us as a community, and he's always held his word up to me, made phone calls on my behalf when I didn't even expect them to be made. It's like, I truly, truly, truly appreciate this man for being just that, a man, not a politician, not anything other than a friend to me. Like, I mean that so sincerely. Like, you define what friendship is, and I appreciate you for that. But I still want to give you your respect. I'm even calling you Senator Coleman now. I know you haven't been sworn in, but bro, like that's a great job, and thank you for being here, man.
Jonathan, thank you for having me. Again, as everybody has said, congratulations. Thank you so much also for just sharing your story. So many people use our stories not for our benefit, but for their benefit. And I'll tell you this, I've never been to prison. I've done a lot of ministry with prisons and jails with my father growing up. But I'm in a position where I'm supposed to be making laws regarding eliminating recidivism. How can I work on that if I've never lived that life? That is why it's so powerful to have you as a part of this work, because you have actually experienced that life and overcome it. And I'm just so proud of you and excited about the work we have to do moving forward.
I appreciate that, man. And that's a great segue. That is a great segue. You and I talked briefly earlier in the week, earlier last week. And like I said, you are a person who I have recognized as you're in that job because there's work to be done, not because you're there to serve your ego or anything else. And I thought it was really timely that you would be on this panel. Can you tell us, as we talk about reentry and reimagining reentry, what does that look like for you coming from the legislature? And what do you think what role does legislature and government have in reducing recidivism?
Well, the Department of Corrections is at the state level. And I notice there's local law enforcement, but at the state level, the Department of Corrections is where we're talking about eliminating prison recidivism. I have a prison in my house district. This prison I know very well because my father-in-law used to be the warden. I met my wife in 8th grade, and we went on our first date. He took me outside, and I thought we were going to be taking pictures together before we went on our first date, and he was just taking a picture of me. And that's when I found out he was the warden. We talked about his work, and I got to know him obviously over the years, and he blessed me to be able to marry his daughter. But not only having gone and done work in prisons, but having seen the way that he did his job, he treated people like human beings. He figured out ways to give people resources they needed so that when they got out of prison, there was a less of a probability of them coming back. People talked about him like he was a legend because of the way he just treated people. And in the position of being a warden, a lot of folks don't have that perspective on folks who are wardens or people who are working in the Department of Corrections. So I had a first-hand example of what it should look like, how it should be in order for folks to have successful transition. So for me, in short, when I look at the Department of Corrections in Colorado, I understand we have about a 50% recidivism rate. In any other business, if you're only operating 50% of the time, you're probably failing. But for some reason, in this case, it's succeeding. I'm not anti-prisons or anti-law enforcement. I just think that when we're in a state where we're one of the lowest funded states, for instance, in the country, when it comes to education, we find ourselves running ballot initiatives and begging for money. We spend $25 million worth of failure at the one prison in my district on Smith Road in Havana. So, for me, I look at this not just from a monetary perspective, but that's how the world works. I look at it initially as a human, the humanity of folks coming out of prison, us knowing they're getting out of prison, but for some reason not preparing them to be successful. Now, I could talk that all day, but at the end of the day, money talks. And folks who spend a lot of money on taxes, when they find out that folks are in prison, they get out 3 to 6 months on average before they go back on petty offenses, or they're not set up for success. So quite frankly, this is better than whatever I have outside because it's not cold out here. I mean, that's the kind of mentality. We got to do better. So look, over the next 4 years, I've committed to Jonathan, and I appreciate you giving me this platform. It really isn't about me. It's about you. It's about celebrating your success, and it's about figuring out how we replicate your success. But over the next 4 years, one of my top 3 priorities will be eliminating prison recidivism. The way we do that is number one, making sure that folks have workforce development and jobs before they even get out, making sure that folks have housing so that when they get out, they have a place to go, making sure that people have mental health and physical health needs being met. If I know you're getting out, I know you're getting out. There's got to be a process by which we do reentry better. And in my time at the legislature, I've talked to folks and said, well, how do we focus on reentry? Well, we need money. Okay, well, let's figure out how we get you money. Well, we need money, but we also need money to pay our correctional officers. We're short at this facility or that facility. So, that's the arguments that I hear. I think one of the things that I know one of the things I'm going to do this year in particular is I'm going to focus on how do we get people out of a system when they get out that gives them a better opportunity to be successful. And one of those issues is record expungement. I just got finished working on a cannabis bill this year that allowed the governor to pardon folks with up to 2 ounces of marijuana conviction. And he pardoned over 2,500 people this year. That sounds nice, but we want to go a step further. And a step further for us is anybody with a nonviolent conviction. After 3 years, once your sentence is over, should have your record expunged. I don't care if it's cannabis or some other issue, whatever the issue is, when you know you don't have to fill out a box on the application, because we did ban the box in my time, which is great. They can still ask you. They can still have the conversation. And unfortunately, it's their choice. There's a level of discrimination in my mind in terms of hiring practices. And if you can't say, I've been forgiven, it's my record has been completely destroyed on this nonviolent offense, then it'll continue to follow you and people will continue to limit your ability to have a job or where you live. So there's so many things we can do. But the second thing I want to do is I do want to figure out a way for us to invest in reentry programs. The last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up, is I've talked to Dean Williams, the director of Department of Corrections. He has a mentality of we need to normalize life outside of prison in prison. If you have a job outside of prison, why don't you have one in? If you have a job that pays you while you're outside of prison, a legitimate amount versus $2 an hour or two, whatever it may be, that's not life outside of prison. If you have a place to live that is safe, that is clean, that is healthy outside of prison, why wouldn't you have that inside of prison? The food you eat, the services you receive, the education you have access to. So all these things, it always comes down to dollars. We don't have the dollars to afford that. Well, I'm glad that we have a guy, Dean Williams, that wants to work on that. I'm going to continue to work with the governor and folks at the legislature that want to focus on this issue. And I hope they focus on it for the right reason, because these are people.
Right.
They're human beings, and not just for the monetary piece. But I'm going to tell you, when they find out how much money we spend on failure, on not serving people and helping them get back on their feet when they get out of prison, half of the time we do well, half the time we don't. It's a real gut punch. So I'm excited to be able to get to work with you on that.
I appreciate that, James. And you spoke to something that I learned about as soon as I got paroled, and I ended up going to school actually to learn more about the criminal justice system, and found out about what's commonly known as the prison industrial complex, and just how much money is spent on that failure, and how many people are getting rich and profitizing and industrializing human lives. It's really discouraging. So I'm glad to hear that you're moving forward with that work. I want to segue with that over to Tammy real quick. Tammy, I have essentially the same questions I have for Senator Coleman. And as we reimagine reentry, what does that look like? And what role does the private sector have in reducing recidivism and creating that reimagined reentry as a reality?
Well, let me first say that, Representative Coleman, I am with you all the way on everything that you just said. So if you need me to come and testify or do anything, I'm here to do that, because housing, jobs, everything is so important during the transition of folks getting out. So it's so refreshing to hear a new representative talking about this.
Let's do it.
So the private sector needs to take a look at what their needs are for employees and not take a look at what their backgrounds necessarily are. I know for some federal jobs, you have to have certain backgrounds and clearances, but for the average job, I would prefer to hire somebody with some lived experience than hire somebody without. And I think the employers out there need to understand that we have good talent. We're smart people, even though we had a criminal history. We are good workers. And most folks that come out of the system, we're hard workers because we have to try double than the person that never went to jail or never went to prison. And that we're fighters and we'll work our way from the bottom up and we'll be the best employees ever. And I think I try to lead that by example, becoming an executive director that had a serious criminal history. So I think just continuing to talk to employers and tell them how important it is to give folks a chance, because we'll surprise them, right? We will show them that they did the right thing by hiring us. Yeah, and some people will disappoint them. but
that's no different than somebody without a record, right?
Right, absolutely. So I think it's just all of us talking to every employer that we know and telling them, give folks a chance. You know people in your circle that are employers, people that do the hiring. We all know people. I talk to people at the grocery store in line and say, hey, what do you do? You're interested in hiring people. And, just having that as a normal conversation instead of it being the secret, like, oh, don't tell them unless they ask you in the interview if you have a criminal history. And it's okay to have a criminal history. Just own it, right? Jonathan, you owned yours criminal history. I own mine every single day. So in telling the folks coming out that they just need to own it. They can't be embarrassed by it, because if they are embarrassed by it, they've never taken responsibility for the things that they've done. And it's okay to have things that you've done as long as you've moved past it.
Thank you, Tammy. Can you just briefly give an overview of what Bayard Enterprises does and how they operate, so that people understand there are ways to help people get those second and third chances?
Absolutely. So Bayard Enterprises, our mission is to help people with disabilities and people with other hurdles to employment get employed. And so we have programs that we actually place people into jobs, that we control the jobs, but we also help get them placed in the community as well. And we help everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, what your background is, we can find somebody a job. And we can coach them through keeping their job. And even when it comes to the self-sabotaging part where, oh no, I'm doing good, what's wrong? We have a mental health professional on staff that can help with some of those crises as well. So Bayard is essentially there to get folks back into the workforce.
Thank you, Tammy. I again so much appreciate you and the work that Bayard's doing, and you for be willing to be an inspiration for people. I'm going to switch over to I left my two intellectuals for the last panelists because I know y'all about to get deep with it. So Terry, I'm move to you first, because I think a lot of what Tammy just spoke to about how people show up despite whatever challenges they are, and living in the frame of mind of so what, now what, like finding solutions for whatever it is. I want to ask you the same. You've taught me all that. That's why I said that. You've taught me a lot of that and held me accountable to a lot of that. When I wanted to feel sorry for myself, or when I would stumble, and you're like, okay, you stumbled, but okay, so what now? What are you going to do? So I want to ask you, as we talk about reentry, reimagining reentry, and reducing recidivism, what role does the individual play in and whether that's the individual who is coming out of the system, or it's the mother or the wife or a husband or uncle, like what role does that, where does that play?
Oh,
It
Jonathan,
is.
that is such a loaded question, and I've heard some very interesting things, and I have to respond to just a couple of them before I go there. Mr. Coleman, I really appreciate your willingness to look at what happens to people when they're reentering society and when they're reentering back in. You know, excuse me, Jonathan, you guys, I'm all over the place right now. My mind's like just kind of going everywhere. First of all, what I want to say is that it's the criminal legal system. We recognize as people of color that it is not a criminal justice system. And so I do want to first put that out there. Secondly, I want to talk about paying the debt to society. As a formerly incarcerated person that is educated, I've earned my master's degree. However, I have a stigma. I have a felony. At what point is my debt to society paid? And I understand and appreciate programs like Bayard Industries and other programs that are coming in. But when we talk about meeting people where they are, bottoms have different levels. Everybody that goes to prison hasn't had the same experience as everybody else. Jonathan, you come from a family of professionals and people that had a work ethic and different things going on. Your bottom was totally different from somebody who has a generational deficit, and wherever that comes from. And you and I share that in common. You know, I think as an individual, recognizing our own stuff and knowing where we've fallen short, what it is that we need, whether it's educational, whether we have no job experience, whether we are broken children that never got fixed, that are now broken adults that have ended up in prison. We really need to stop this cookie cutter approach to sentencing, and we need to stop just putting people in slots. You know, when you meet people where they are, then people can come back from where they need to be. You know, jobs, employment, you know, housing, all of that. I need a place to live when I come back, and I need to go to work. And whether I have a high school diploma, a GED, a bachelor's, a master's, whatever else, if society really lets me pay my debt back, then I can go where I need to be as an individual.
I so appreciate that, and I recognize that, you know, I had more resiliency due to some of the more privileges that I had growing up, and understanding, even when I had the epiphanies and made the mental adjustments while I was in prison, I was able to do that because of some of the privileges that I had growing up. I recognize that all the time. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about like disrupting the entire system and saying this is not, if I, with the privileges that I experienced up until the age of adulthood, etc., still ended up in prison, what chance does a person who is really behind the eight ball, no pun intended, right, what chance do they stand in order to being able to stand up for themselves and turn things around? And if we don't have a system that isn't built on institutionalizing and industrializing and using people as commodities, then we really don't stand a chance. But I think I'm still in Leo's thunder, because I chose you last to kind of tie all this together and say what I'm thinking probably much more articulately. Leo, tell us a little bit about Lifeline, the work that you're doing, and answer the same question as we reimagine reentry and we look at reducing recidivism. What role does the community play? What role? What can we all do as a community and society even to start making a difference.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm excited about this. My head's going everywhere as everybody's speaking, because everybody speaks facts and volumes of that. A good friend of mine once said, the system's not broke. It's designed to work. It's working exactly how it is designed to work. Right. There's a term called transformative justice. That's for us, by us. We have to realize, and I like what you talked about, Jonathan, earlier about purpose. We have to realize our purpose and be proud of our purpose, because even surviving through the monotony within the communities and the manipulation, the temptation that it has to offer, for us to even survive through that, we have great purpose. But we just have to define it, right? But so much is defined by what we hear, not about what we see and about who we are and about what we believe about ourselves, is because 85% of what we learn is by what we see, the other is by what we hear. And we're constantly told about this is what it is, right? Me personally, my motive behind this is to continue the Chicano movement of what my ancestors once did. And the Chicano movement is just not for my culture specifically. It's for people of color, to give them the education and employment opportunities, because what that does is create life opportunities. Because one thing about the manipulation, the temptation, and the subcultures and the situations within our communities, some points they only offer two outcomes. That's an 8 by 10 or 6 feet under, right? So within that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to even say, like how I started out with the systems and things like that, is even through the Chicano movement that started in 1960s. At that point, there were 0% of minorities enrolled into college. And at the point of the Chicano movement with the Black and brown brothers and sisters, all of a sudden enrollment of college went over 2,000 individuals. And hence that the systems bombed our individuals. Why? Because the internal bias, the racist, and the judgments that was placed, because they didn't see the equality within the world. So absolutely empathy, but I also say accountability. Knowledge is power, and empathy brings understanding of that knowledge, absolutely. But those people who have the understanding need to be held accountability so they can keep driving forward. As I love what Senator Coleman had talked about. I love that. And I know this man will stick to his guns. But there are so many people within our legislature that has climbed the things that say that this is what we're going to do for our communities, but they get there and then their character is compromised, right? So what we need to do is to be able to work with the entire ecosystem. The community needs to understand it's transformative justice. It's for us. It's by us. But at the same time, we have to accept the reality of the situation that systems are in place. So how do we experience that and work through that? What options do we have to replace the negative with positive? Somebody asked on there about the mental health process of what's going on. 90% of our brain is subconscious. There are so many of our community that's filled with any of stressors and anxieties, and anywhere from trauma bonding to PTSD, just for the naturals within our communities, right? And 10% of our brain is what's conscious, but at the same time, we're telling them there's hope, there's opportunities, there's all of this in place. But at the same time, what they have seen by 85% of how they learn by their eyes, and the 15% by what they hear, is that hope really real? So what we need to do is align truly to say that, we can do this. And it is the power in one, but at the same time, we can't fake the funk to just to check the box. There needs to be accountability in every single one. So what Lifeline does is it's crisis intervention, prevention, intervention, and reentry services for both youth and adults. I could talk our mission statement, but in reality, we serve human hearts and souls that we have the opportunity and blessings to be in front of that made mistakes. But the best things about those that make mistakes is that they're that much more knowledgeable of how to be within their skin and within themselves, how to be that productive family member, and how to bring that productive community member. What we have to do is mirror the change that we want to see. But at the same time, by accepting the reality of the situation, as we know some systems are in place that things are compromised. So what we do is we understand that as an organization outside of direct service, that if we can't help our people because there's legislations or laws in place, We'll go policy reform. We're not the professionals in that, but I have great friends in this community of people. I rock with Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition, your Second Chance Center, many of your sponsors on there. That's the A game right there. And those individuals, what they do is create laws and opportunities is what they create for individuals to be humanized, to be able to get on after getting out, to be able to find their purpose, to give their purpose in the family, and to give their purpose within their communities. So what we have to do is change the law and policy from legislation. And then from there, what we have done is partnered within one of the biggest systems, and something that I'm talking about that I was very honored to be a part of. I was never any driving sense of that. The driving sense was CCJRC, Second Chance Center, Latino Coalition, Servicios de la Raza. I was blessed to be a part of it, but it's House Bill 14-1355. This was some years ago, but it is the first time in history that Department of Corrections had to work with community organizations because recidivism was too high. Because if you always do what you've always done, you'll always be where you already been. So what means what's going to be different? And community had to come in place and say, this is what needs to be different, is we have to align with empathy, within accountability, but with an agenda. We have to begin with the end in mind and make sure that our why is bigger than our what. Because of that, we have process and we have understanding. And then if we could link and we could bring that together, then all of a sudden within the legislation and then the systems and then the community organizations, we are now talking, we're doing the big think tank, and we're getting together, but we're having understanding and action at place. So the program that is called is Wages, is Working Gain, Education, and Employment Skills. It started out with 4 partners. Now I believe there's 17 to 25. It's also in California. But what it does is it becomes a part of a person's parole plan. Because when you're getting out of the situation, sometimes the scariest part of your life is when you're getting out. That's the most vulnerable, because you only know a lot of what got you in there, right? So we become part of that parole plan. We understand this individual, but at the same time, we understand under Maslow's hierarchy of needs, your basic needs need to be met. So a lot of us have recovery housing, a lot of us, for the simple fact that, you know what, let's get on and take away what you need to do to survive so we can start getting you to the point of being able to strive. But within that, at the same time, as the whole legislation and as the systems and as the community, we need to create a safety bracket. We need to be able to understand, how could one person walk to a school and employment to whatever it might be to their destination safely? Because within there, the next point of that hierarchy of needs is their psychological. Now we could work with their mental health to find the purpose that they deserve and desire to have. Why? Because that's going to create opportunities in their life, which leads to that point of self-actualization. And through that whole point, I would have to say it's on my arms. You can never give up. You can never let go. Because the thing is when we decide to just check the box and leave, that big homie, that gangster, that manipulation, that temptation, that pulse in that community is still waiting for them. So we have to mirror the change that we want to see. How? By unity. And we do that by empathy, absolutely. But accountability of that empathy and all is one is what's going to make a difference. And it's all out of love, man. It really, really is. There's hood love. That's going to give you your immediate needs, but it's going to bring you to an 8x10 or 6 feet under. And those who grew up in these communities understand what hood love is. But the real love is genuine understanding of a person to give them real life opportunities to get where you need, want, deserve, and desire. That's what I have to say.
Woo! I got chills. So I would say one of the smartest things I've ever learned how to do is to build a team of people around me who are smarter and more resourceful. And I think, Terry, I'm going to pat myself on the back again because y'all did not disappoint. I'm so just privileged and blessed. James, I know you wanted to, you had a couple of last words. I know you are a preacher's son, so I'm giving you the 30-second warning now.
I got you. So first off, let the church say amen.
Amen.
Leo, Tammy, Terry, everything y'all said was phenomenal. Real quick, Leo made a comment about accountability. 40 years we've been working on police accountability in reform bills. The bill we passed this year for police accountability was not the first time we've run that kind of a bill. That kind of bill where we make it so that we ban chokeholds, We get rid of qualified immunity for law enforcement officers. That bill dies every single year, has for the last 40 years. You know what the difference was this year? Pressure. People were outside of the Capitol every day during the legislative session. We could hear them inside the building protesting. It took a man dying on national television for almost 9 minutes for us to create a sense of urgency. So I'm saying that to say that level of accountability that I think Leo said, your integrity, when you get elected, you say what you're going to do, but when you get in the building, it's compromised. Who you are is compromised. The only way you keep that is by having pressure. So that bill didn't get passed because we're such great elected officials. That bill was the first of its kind in the country, and one of only 6 states that have passed a police bill since then. Representative Leslie Herod led that initiative. That bill passed because of y'all. It passed because if we had that same level of urgency around prison recidivism, I want to apologize to y'all. There are people sitting in prisons right now. There are people sitting outside in tents, as cold as it is outside. We all sitting inside nice. I'm privileged. I grew up here, but I'm privileged. I've come through stuff, but I'm privileged. I want to apologize to y'all because you're probably wondering, is anybody thinking about me right now in this moment? So I just want us to continue to have that level of urgency. And I want to thank you all for just having that level of accountability. But I want to be clear. We cannot show up and ask for people to vote for us every 2 to 4 years and then we don't see you anymore, or we don't reach out to you anymore, vice versa, right? So we got to have folks engage us, but I'm telling you now, we need you. So here's me engaging y'all. When it comes to this bill we're running, it'll get the crap kicked out of it. And that's okay, because it's the right thing to do. We should be running that kind of policy. But the only way that gets passed is not because I or anybody's in a position. Yes, we have to have the willingness to do it, but it gets passed because there's folks in the community who are willing to show up safely as you can because of COVID-19 and support us to help get those things done. And not only is my daddy as a preacher, I'm a preacher too. So I'm gonna stop. I'll take up an offering when it's
Well, all things according to his purpose. I appreciate that, Reverend Senator Coleman. I think that you actually gave me a great segue into how I want to wrap this up, and asking the viewers. Like, I asked, what can the community do? What should government do? What role does private sector play? What role does the individual play? And now I really want people, whoever's watching, whether you're watching on YouTube, you're watching on Facebook, you're watching on LinkedIn, wherever you're watching this, I want you to ask yourselves, what can I do? What can I do to make a difference? Reverend Senator Coleman just spoke about the intense amount of pressure that was applied to the legislators within the Capitol when people showed up outside consistently and raised their voices for justice and for equity, right? I am I'm overwhelmed with the number of people who I have in my circle who show up every day to do this work. Many without being paid or paid close to what they're worth, and they still do it. I've gotten to know Tammy so well because we have literally sat in the Capitol for hours, taking time off of work in order to speak for maybe 5 minutes in support or against a bill that people were trying to get past us. So I say all that to say, I need you to ask yourself, what can I do? Like, what is your purpose? What are you going to do on purpose? We can't accidentally get our way out of this, because like Leo said, the system's working exactly as it was designed to work. There was a slide earlier, and I think I may have probably glanced over it and not given it the attention that it deserved, that within 10 years of the Civil Rights Act being passed, the incarceration rate of American citizens increased by 100%. Within 30 years, 300%. That tells me that the system is working exactly as it was designed. What are you going to do about it? So I'm going to wrap this up now. I want again to thank everybody who has taken time to join us. I need to be very intentional. Leo, you stole a little bit of my thunder, but I think I stole some of yours earlier.
Sorry.
I need to highlight again these organizations that are doing the work: the Second Chance Center, Other Side Academy. Tracy, I saw you had a comment in there about the pandemic changing employment outcomes. What are programs adjusting? How are programs adjusting to come? How is technology use becoming the top skill? There's a great program or organization out there called Justice Reskill. Aaron is doing phenomenal work helping people get technically capable and have the aptitude in order to move into some of those jobs once if they've been formerly incarcerated or have some type of criminal conviction. I will be sure to connect you if you just reach out to me. I'm sorry I don't have his information on here. Remerge, Cross Purpose, and of course CCJRC and the fantastic team that they have over there. I'm a little bit heartbroken that my man Coop couldn't be here. He's spending some time with the family today. I actually wanted him to be on the panel, but I'm very respectful when people tell me they need that time. Again, I want to shout out our sponsors one last time. These are people who really stepped up, and whether it's financially, emotionally, or spiritually, or physically, these are the people that really help make this event happen in organizations. AB, y'all saw him. He introduced me. I don't know why he was reading my bio like the dude don't know me, but, you know, it is what it is. Jim Peros, good getting to know this man really well. He is within Leadership Denver with me this year. He's with Flood and Peterson, and you know, he when the call came out for sponsorships, he stepped up. Thank you, Jim. My friend Debbie Hunter Holden, the former Mayor Pro Tem out here in Aurora, former City Council person, incredible person, and I have to be very intentional in shouting out Debbie. Earlier this year, she was the victim of a heinous physical attack out here in Aurora, and she has bounced back, and I just love her to death. I need you all to put some prayers up for her anyway, just because she's a great person and she's a supporter of mine. So Tychus Holloway doing great work within the city and county of Denver. He's another one of our sponsors. Alpha Events Group, Chris Cleveland, helped me be a visionary around what this event is. I'm very grateful for him. Of course, you got BBTA. It better be better than average. That's an in-house sponsor because, you know, that was my vision. That was my purpose. So BBI, Black Business Initiative. Thank you, Jice. Everybody give Jice a round of applause for helping this, the technical side, making this work. I was stumbling over my own feet back here, and this would not have happened without Jice Johnson and the Black Business Initiative. Fantastic organization, fantastic lady. The Colorado Criminal Justice Reform Coalition already shot them out, but Christy and Justin and the team over there, Henry, are incredible people who are really disrupting the system in a way that's unapologetic and very necessary. Cross Purpose, Jason Jans and Cordelia are, oh man, I can't say enough good things about both of them, but especially Cordelia. I hope you don't take offense, Jason, but Cordelia is a person with a heart as big as this room. She really cares about the people who she serves, and love her to death. Thank you for supporting me. Justice Reskill, Tracy, that's the organization I just told you about. I will be definitely getting you their information. Justice Reskill is a great organization helping formerly incarcerated people adapt and be nimble in the changes of the world and where it's going. Carol Peoples with Remerge, a fantastic resource for people to find out what is available for them in so many different ways. Once they have found themselves in the criminal justice system. I met Carol several years ago when I was still doing gang intervention, and she's been a friend, a resource, and a supporter ever since. So happy for her and thankful for having her in my life. The Second Chance Center, I could go on and on. Hassan is a big brother. Sean is my twin. And Mr. Adam over there, Brother Adam, is literally the wisest man that I've ever met in my life. I would not be here today on this live stream if it was not for them. Hassan helped me have even more refined vision for who I could be in this world. Him and Sean gave me my first opportunity ever to work with as Be Better Than Average. It was amazing. That was like 5-6 years ago. I'm incredibly grateful for Hassan, Sean, and Adam, and everything that they're doing over there, and the rest of the staff. I don't want to be exclusive. Just really, those three have been my brothers in this. And then the other side of the Academy is a fantastic organization that is more than just reentry. There's more than just community corrections. It really is working on helping people get what they need. Like Terry said, meeting people where they are and helping them get to where they want and need to be. Fantastic organization. Really, if you have some time, look up any and all of these organizations, find out the work that they're doing. And I'm not one who says that if you can open up your pocketbooks, do so. But I'm also saying, like, your time is equity that a lot of these organizations could really use. And more specifically, the individuals who are struggling to find their way, like it was with me. It took one kind person who just really looked and said, how can I help this young man get out of the system? When I ask you, what can you do? When you ask yourself, what can I do? You could be that one kind person. So again, with all that, I know I went a little bit longer than I intended. I knew I was probably going to go to 8 o'clock, so we're ending early, honestly. I appreciate all of you all. Julian. I thought my VP was going to come in here and say goodbye to y'all. He's not, so I'll say it. Goodbye, good night. Thank you all so much. And I want to end with this. I think it speaks to what you were saying, Terry. Quote by James Baldwin: "As any Mexican, any Puerto Rican, any black man, any poor person, ask the wretched how they fare in the halls of justice, and then you will know not whether or not the country is just, but whether or not it has love for justice or any concept of it. It is certain in any case that the ignorance along with power is the most ferocious enemy that justice can have. We need to be the love." Thank you, Leo, for that point. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Jice. Thank you, James. Thank you, Albus. Thank you, A.G. Weiser. And thank you, everybody who tuned in tonight. I appreciate you. I love you. Good night.